Hey, it's Tom, and today we're going to take a look at Canon's 24 to 70mm f4L lens. So I used this lens quite a bit when I was traveling to Europe and Morocco a few months ago, and I took a lot of photos with it, so I have a pretty good sense of what the lens is capable of and what the strong points and weak points of the lens are. So the 24 to 70mm focal length range is very versatile, and it's very useful for things like travel photography, and you can also use it for portraits at the 70mm end, although it's not as good as a dedicated 85mm prime lens for that, but it's still very usable and very good for that. It's not good, obviously, for situations where you need to zoom in more than 70mm, so it's obviously not going to replace a 70 to 200mm lens, but a lot of the time you know that you won't be needing that extra focal length range, so having a 24 to 70mm lens is it can be a very good general purpose lens. The lens is very sharp, and you won't have problems being able to get sharp and detailed images with it. At the wider focal lengths of this lens, from 24 to 35, you can definitely use this lens to take nice landscape photos. In terms of the build quality and construction, this is an L lens, so it is well made. It feels pretty sturdy and robust, although it does incorporate a lot of plastic. It doesn't feel flimsy or cheap. It does have a meter here where you can see where you're focusing, so you can see what distance you're focusing, which can be nice if you're doing video with it. It also has a macro mode, which is very unusual for a 24 to 70mm lens, and with the macro mode it actually goes out to 80mm of focal length. You do have to be quite close to your subject when you're using the macro mode, but it is a pretty cool feature to have. It's not a true macro, so it doesn't have a one-to-one ratio. It's a 0.7 to 1 ratio, but that is still pretty useful and neat feature if you're into macro photography. Another important thing about this lens is that it is much cheaper than the 24 to 70mm f2.8 lens. It's probably about half the price, or maybe even a little less. So, and it's also lighter by about 30% or so. So those are some big advantages. You could use that money, towards another lens. On the other hand, if you do have this lens, it's not great for low light situations. So you would probably want to have a prime lens or two, for those lower light situations. The lens is able to get decent bokeh, especially at f4. But it's not anything amazing, but it's still, you're able to get bokeh with it. If you're using this lens for portraits, I would suggest using it at 70mm and maybe going a stop away from f4 just to have a little bit more sharpness. The lens is still usable in lower light situations, although it's not amazing because it only goes to f4, so you'd probably want a prime lens with you as well, like the 50mm f1.8 STM. That would be a good choice for a second lens because it's very small and easy to carry. So if you're doing travel photography or you want to travel light, that could be a good combination of lenses to have with you. Overall, I would say that this is a very nice lens. It's a good value for money, and it's come down in price a lot since it was originally released. If you can't afford the f2.8 version of this lens, which is much more expensive and a bit heavier, then this is a good choice. You can get this and a 50mm lens for less than the price of the f2.8, so that might be potentially a good option for a lot of people. Um, and if you have any questions about the lens, please feel free to leave questions in the comments below, and I will try to answer them. Till next time, take care.